Well, thank you for joining us here today for our breakout session. This is a presentation that we made at another venture cafe a few months ago, and it was received with, I would say, with great enthusiasm. I think there's a lot of buzz around, what gaming is becoming, specifically esports. So we're pleased to be here today. We are SweetScience, a full-service marketing firm that is based in Philadelphia. Actually, more specific, we're located, our headquarters is in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. My name is Tom Conti. I'm the founder and CEO. With me is Jeff Odiorne, who is our executive creative director. We have been working in this gaming space for quite some time, really going all the way back to the beginning with EA, not only launching titles over the years, but Jeff specifically, he is actually the man who coined the term, if it's in the game, it's in the game. So he was a force behind the launch of EA Sports. And since that time, we've always stayed involved, carrying through to today when we're creating programs for companies like Sony and Amazon, Game Tech, Nike, and others. And what we have noticed is that because there has been so much noise and energy in the market about what's going on with esports, we've been getting a lot of questions from our clients that are non-endemic to the sport or to the category about, how real is it? Is it really as big an opportunity as everybody says that it is? And so on and so forth. So that really sent us to work, I would say about a year ago, to begin to create this, what we'll call the primer, if you will, that is meant to answer the question, is it a real sport? How big is the opportunity? What does it mean for brands? And are there ways to get in? We put this presentation together about a year ago, and this is the one that we give to many of our clients as a way to just introduce them to the size of the opportunity, some of the dynamism of the category, and then also give them some initial strategies for how to think about beginning to break in to esports as a marketing opportunity for their company and for their brand. So that's what we want to share with you today. And again, I talked about the big question, is it a big opportunity? Is it a real sport? Is it a real opportunity for brands? The answer to all three of those questions is yes, yes, and yes. So we're going to start by sizing, giving you some sense of the size of the opportunity. The first thing to know about this category is that it is, if I can advance, it is a massive opportunity. It's a massive category. Esports is currently $25 billion, which is a piece of a much larger global gaming industry that is $160 billion. The larger number including video game titles, content publishing, and video content streaming, or gaming video content streaming. All of that goes into the larger opportunity. But we're here today to really illuminate what is the emerging opportunity, and that is the $25 billion industry that is represented by esports. And to put that into perspective, the way to think about that is it's bigger than the music and the movie industries combined. For every $10 that is made in movies and music, the esport industry is currently generating $16 in revenue. And this is actually pre-COVID. So it's even gotten much more significant since, going to the theater to actually watch movies has taken such a hit in the last 10 months. But it is massive. And the audience for gaming video content reached 1 billion people in 2020. Viewership in the US is now on par with the NFL. And in fact, if you think about it, the viewership of the World Championship of League of Legends, the finals, was double that of Super Bowl 52. So for us here in Philadelphia, that's we know what the viewership of Super Bowl 52 was, and considering this was double that, that's pretty incredible. It's also growing rapidly. 35% annual growth rate is projected through 2022. And when you think about that, we're not only talking about momentum, we're talking about momentum with an audience that is absolutely right for marketers. So it's not only a huge industry, it's not only growing, it's growing among the right audience. This is a very desirable audience for marketers. There are currently 495 million esports enthusiasts worldwide. 65% are 18 to 34-year-old males. Now, from a demographic standpoint, this is the audience that is proven so elusive to marketers through traditional media channels. Everybody's trying to find men 18 to 34. Well, they're trying to find them because they're here. And it's not the stereotypical gamer, persona that's out there. These aren't guys sitting in their basement, or their mom's basement, worse yet, gaming day in and day out. These are folks that are young, they're educated, they're professionals, and they're also affluent. 45% report a household income of over $75,000, and 30% actually report a household income of over $90,000 per year. So these are folks that marketers are looking for. These are the ones that everybody wants, and you're going to find them in the esports arena. But it's also not just about men. It's not about guys, okay? The other thing to understand about esports is that it is incredibly exclusive. Female participation rising rapidly as a deep passion. Currently, females make up, depending on what data point you look at, anywhere from 35 to 39% of the global esports market. And they're spending an average of 15 hours a week playing or watching games. So it's not a casual hobby. And their enthusiasm is not in the games and the titles that you would expect. They're passionate about League of Legends. They're passionate about Call of Duty. These are the titles that are at the top of the list. So we have to acknowledge that as marketers when we think about beginning to penetrate this particular industry. It's also geographically agnostic. So we know that there's a heavy concentration, obviously, in Asia Pacific. We understand that. They still lead the way for all esports fans and participation. But there is now strong global representation. We've got players and we've got fans in big numbers in all regions of the planet. And because of that, what we see that tribes are being built around games and teams. It's not based on socioeconomic status. It's not based on gender. You throw all that out. We've got people from all over the world that are finding themselves coming together based on a game or a team or even a specific athlete that is within a specific team. So you are going to get great ubiquity if you can find a way to authentically connect with these fans based on these three dimensions of games, teams, and athletes. The other thing that we're always talking about is that all of this growth that we're talking about and the profile of the audience that we're talking about, it has made esports a magnet for brands. Currently, 1.4 billion of esports revenue comes directly from brand support. So we're talking about merchandising, we're talking about ticket sales, we're talking about game publisher fees for things like product placement. In many ways, that still makes it a ground floor opportunity. It's a lot of money, but for esports specifically, we're talking about $25 billion. So the real growth is going to come from these non-endemic brands that are finding that they can really connect in this space. And for those that have decided to play early, they're finding it because 60% of the esports sponsors are non-endemic brands. These are brands that are not gaming platforms, gaming titles, peripherals, controllers, those kinds of things. We're talking about snack foods. We're talking about carbonated beverages, energy drinks, apparel. This is where we're really finding brands scoring within esports. And there are certain ways that you need to behave if you are a non-endemic brand to really find success using this particular channel, if you will, as a marketing platform. And Jeff is really going to get into that in his part of the presentation. What has COVID-19 meant? It's accelerated everything. If we look at behaviors that have happened in almost every category, whether it's good or bad change, change has happened in a big way, and it's accelerated much more than what we would have seen without COVID. They say that in any given category, as a people, we've experienced 10 years of change in literally 10 months. And I think that that's really evident when you consider what's going on with COVID and the mainstream adoption of esports. We've seen competitive gaming increase 75% in the US alone since lockdown has happened. More importantly, what we've seen happen is that there's been a crossover with traditional sports. And if you just think about what happened when all of our live sports went away for a period of months, really, I mean, for like 6 months, there were no live sports. First thing that happened is everyday Joes turned to competitive gaming to actually get in and begin to compete. But the networks that were looking for programming started to bring esports programming into their networks to see if it would actually connect with a live audience, and it did. And it started with trying to replace traditional sports leagues with virtual sports leagues. What happened with the NFL? What happened with NASCAR? What happened with Formula One racing? What happened with horse racing? It was all virtual, and they were taking programming and creating competitions based on sports competition based on a virtual world. And what they found out is it really generated a significant audience. And as live sports has come back, it's actually stayed pretty stable. They still have the audience. So as a result, new deals were forming between professional esports leagues and networks to carry sports programming into their schedules. Not only throughout 2021, but beyond. And so not only do we have. Did I lose you guys?
No, sorry.
Sorry, Jeff.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to throw a quick anecdote in there, which is
Sure.
along line of what you're saying, that the NFL, I don't know who on the call knows this or doesn't know this, but after decades of trying to figure out a way to make the Pro Bowl relevant, because it falls between the end of the playoffs and the Super Bowl, the Pro Bowl this year is going to be played on Madden. So it's going to be a totally simulated Pro Bowl. That's the kind of stuff Tom's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Formula One, when everything was locked down, the drivers for the teams that compete in the real Formula One were then competing in esports. And they were competing, and it was broadcast on, it was broadcast on NBCSN every Sunday. They would have an esports competition. There were points, there were awards, there was a yearly total and tournament. And then when Formula One came back, they actually then went back to drive, and they brought in other athletes as well as amateurs that were good enough to compete in that realm to actually become part of the live programming that was on NBCSN. So this not only creates opportunities within the games and the platforms themselves, now there's going to be advertising opportunities aligned with this type of programming through the network. So something to be conscious about as we all move forward. All of this has created a very large and somewhat complex ecosystem of brands, of platforms, everything from Twitch to YouTube and so on, publishers of the actual titles themselves, leagues, competitions that are both, leagues that are specific to games, to specific games, and then leagues that are beginning to form based on aligning with professional sports leagues. The NBA 2K League is one example. Other types of organizations that are growing up around gaming and being communities and collectives that are not only a place for people to get involved in gaming social environments, but to actually form teams and compete in these bigger tournaments that exist around certain titles, games themselves, and then the fans themselves. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Odiorne again. He's the executive creative director of SweetScience, and he's going to talk to you about some base level strategies for beginning to penetrate this particular environment successfully.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you all. It's really interesting, as Tom said in the beginning, we like to frame it up like this. We've been involved in competitive gaming and what is now the tip of the spear, eSports, for about 30 years now. The original launch, the way we coin it is from eSports, when we launched that about 30 years ago, from EA Sports to eSports. And what's really fascinating about this is, the main sort of brand engagement when leagues and teams in the traditional world started to take gaming seriously as an opportunity for marketers, it was based around the sports sims. And now those of you who know, this ecosystem and this world, Planet Gamer as it is, that like the sports sims are just a small percentage of what the industry itself has produced and allowed the competitive gene to manifest itself in some of the quote fantasy games, League of Legends, Call of Duty. Tom mentioned a couple of them, but watching the industry go from a sports simulation manifestation of the competitive gene to this sort of fantasy world where people are allowed to compete for big prizes and big money. It's become a full-fledged industry, and we're really just on the doorstep of it. This is the ecosystem as Tom has laid out. We're not going to talk down to anyone today. I'm sure there are people on this call that know this industry inside out, upside down, left and right. My part of the presentation was originally designed just to give people a little taste for those who are maybe not as familiar with how big this is and how emerging it is, how big the tsunami is. These are just a couple, as we like to say, tips, tricks, cheats, codes, hacks, from a marketing perspective to allow the non-endemic brand to sneak its way into the world of competitive gaming and esports. Couple of pointers right at the top. If you want to capitalize on the esports tsunami, these are some things that you absolutely must consider if you're a non-endemic brand. One is that esports is a real sport. And what we tell the clients that come in that, don't believe that or whatever, that's fine, except that, tens of millions of people around the world, the fans and the participants of esports do think of it as a real sport. So if they think of it as a real sport and you want to talk to them, even if you don't think it's a real sport, fake it, okay? Esports is a real sport. The second point is go all in or stay out. And what we mean by that is, I'm not sure about this, it's the ground floor, gaming's fly by night, there's stereotypes around gaming. They're all not true. And they're changing daily, and you can't trickle your way into this. There's a real opportunity to get first to market in your brand category if you're willing to push in. And the recommendation is, and again, there's ways you have to come in respectfully, but if you want to come into this world, you don't dip your toe in, you jump in feet first, because that's the gamer attitude, feet first on everything. And that doesn't mean you do it recklessly. Place a lot of little bets rather than one big one. It's like if you're at the roulette table and you've got a stack of $20, 20 chips on your plate, put 2 on 10 numbers. I was never good at math, but I think that works out right. Put 2 on 10 numbers, you don't push it all in on 32 red and spray, and spray and pray. So, esports is a real sport. It's worth getting in. Go all in or don't waste your money. And if you are going to come in, just spread your bets out a little bit. So that's kind of the top line thinking. If you want to do this at all, having been worked again for 30 years on everything from CPG to travel and leisure to healthcare to financial services to video games, you name it. there is no more discerning audience that I have lived and participated alongside of and actually tried to create, advertising dialogue with than the gaming world. These are the most, again, discerning, characters I've ever come across from a target audience standpoint, and they demand one thing: authenticity, authenticity, authenticity. This isn't just a product choice for them. This isn't just a brand choice for them. This is a lifestyle for them. This is their lifestyle. And if you can't authentically blend in, if you try to come in from the outside over the top without acknowledging that they are unique, and then within it, there's a lot of uniqueness to the unique, you don't stand a chance. So what we're going to give is a couple pointers on the inside game. So there's a couple ways on that original chart that Tom showed, which was the ecosystem. There's a bunch of different ways that brands can try to integrate in. And again, this works for endemic brands too, but the assumption is that if you're an endemic brand, you have a pretty good idea of what the Planet Gamer is all about. But for the non-endemic brands, this is kind of a couple cheats 101. One of the things that was on the ecosystem was that fans can be a smart inside game. The fans are an important connector for brands trying to come in. If you think about, how the players, because of the two-way dialogue and the accessibility of esports relative to more traditional sports, there's a real opportunity to connect with the players themselves. And that's what keeps the fan engagement so high. So, what we like to talk about is, instead of coming through the front door or with a ton of cash, or coming through the back door, is break a side window. So as I go through these couple of quick examples, when we're talking about fans, on the left, you have a very front door way to come in. If you've got the kind of cash to be able to afford the gentleman on the left, his name, for those who don't know, his code is Ninja. His actual name is Tyler Blevins. If you got that kind of cash, that's more of a traditional sponsorship through an athlete that you can reach the fans, and he's got a huge following. The gentleman on the right is someone who most people don't know. If you're from Philly, you might, because he used to play for the EMLS eSports. He was on the team for the Philadelphia Union. He's a FIFA player. His handle is Duelsta. His name is Cormac Dooley. The world had no idea who he was 2 years ago. We connected with him and took him over representing America, where he wasn't even listed in the top 500 in the world, to compete in the European Cup on behalf of Sony. And he was able to not only go there and perform well, but he not only came with a big audience, it grew 10, 15-fold. He's since transferred teams. He's with Nashville now. But the point is, for every one Ninja who costs a lot of money, and that's a front door play, and and sure, that would be great, there are dozens of these path to pro guys who have great social media influence. Their social media influence grows quickly based on their gameplay, and you can afford to go in through the side window, get a couple of them, and you get the same results. So again, front door on the left, break a side window on the right. Do you want Ninja, or do you want a couple of Duelstas floating around? That's how fans can be activated. Leagues is another way to connect with this audience, obviously. On the left, we all know what League of Legends is. Just a famous title, massive league created around League of Legends, iconic brand. If you can afford the sponsorship or be a part of the League of Legends League, more power to you. If you're a non-endemic brand trying to be a little more efficient with your dollars and find a way to connect with these fans that isn't as expected, there's a third tier. You've got your pros, you've got your amateur leagues, and there's actually a third tier of amateur leagues, which is the baseline for path to pros to come in. It's a path to pro. One example of that, there are others, is a brand called Challengers Uprising. Challengers Uprising holds the exclusive license for the third tier amateur league for League of Legends. So what does that mean? It means that brands can use the League of Legends mark in these tournaments. So you get the League of Legends brand equity, but you're doing it through Challengers Uprising tournaments, which are rapidly growing, and it's done obviously at a lot less cost. We actually put Nike in some of the Challengers Uprising tournaments for the finals for League of Legends for that third tour amateur. So nice side window right there. If you want to get into a league, there are options other than the primary leagues that we all know and have heard of. Teams, or we like to say organizations, because teams in esports are not the same as teams in professional sports, meaning that colleges can field teams and play for the big championships. Amada at Full Sail University is one example. But there are also these culture clubs that can be a really smart inside game. So on the left, yes, front door, you want to come in, you got a bunch of cash, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Partner with the Philadelphia Fusion, okay? Pro team, they're an Overwatch team, which Overwatch is Blizzard. So that's a great way to buy in up front with known tried and true entities. But competing alongside Team Fusion in certain tournaments in certain ways, you might find a team from FaZe Clan. That's the logo on the mark on the right. Again, most of you that are familiar with the industry know this all too well, but for a lot of non-endemic brands, they've never heard of FaZe Clan or 100 Thieves or dozens of others. But FaZe Clan, these clubs are culture clubs. They embody the lifestyle of gaming as much as they are good at games. So with them comes what we call blender heads, which are the modern gamer, which is not just a one-trick pony on gaming. They're also sports fans. They're deeply into music. They're into all kinds of other cultural touch points. And these clubs of professional athletes in esports have come together like FaZe Clan, like 100 Thieves. That would be a side door play versus a front door play if you wanted to talk to teams. Traditional sports, believe it or not, like just because esports is the hot new ticket, it doesn't mean that you need to walk away from traditional sports. As a matter of fact, traditional sports are a great catalyst for scale. And oh, by the way, a lot of the traditional sports, media distribution channels and networks are starting to carry esports, whether it's lifestyle depictions of that or whether it's the tournament themselves. We can skip by the obvious ABC, NBC, CBS, wide world of sports. Back when we launched EA Sports, ESPN was just starting, and boy, that was the cutting edge sort of thing. That has now become a front door opportunity. If you want to connect with esports fans, connect through ESPN to get to their coverage of esports. But now El Presidente, Dave Portnoy, and Barstool have created an esports, have an esports sub-channel, but they have created their own environment, their own vibe, very modern. Even gambling sites like, Penn Gaming found their ecosystem so interesting that they bought them. So, again, there's nothing wrong with going in through the front door and doing a sponsorship with ESPN, but entities like Barstool and the vibe and the attitude that they kick off, as well as the purely endemic esports brands, streaming brands that you find on Twitch or Caffeine or any of the other, starting platforms. But again, using a non-endemic traditional sports channel network to get in, you can go through the front door. You can also go through the side door, and something like a Barstool would be an opportunity like that. So we look for these opportunities. Sponsor, this is a little bit different. It's not really an either or, but the opportunity in the esports world is a lot more than it is in the traditional world when it comes to sponsoring partnerships. Brands actually align, they actually co-brand, they actually do stuff together, especially when they're not directly competitive. So this one isn't really an either or, it's just showing three different entry points. If you wanted to, get into esports and you wanted to partner with another brand to make your brand relevant, HyperX is a great peripheral. They make great headsets, brand that is totally endemic. There's nothing wrong with that. Nike in the middle, one of the greatest, traditional marketers, on the planet. They, especially for sports, needed to be convinced that esports was a real thing. And we actually helped lead through a gamer immersion day conversion to help the leaders of various Nike divisions understand that it is a real sport and they should be looking at it as such and treat it as a vertical internally, just like they do the others. So you've got traditional brands that themselves are trying to figure this out. But on the left, you've got, endemic. In the middle, you've got an emerging and non-endemic that's merging, that's excited and taking it seriously. And then you sit there and you look like, why in the world on esports, in an esports deck, would there be a Louis Vuitton logo? Well, the truth of the matter is that even a Louis Vuitton logo, that you'd find on a $50,000, luggage set, actually happened to make the trophy case for League of Legends. So again, really interesting brands from all walks of life are finding their way. And if you can find the right combination, which we do a lot of matchmaking in this space, you can do anything from an endemic brand like HyperX, an emerging brand within like Nike, and even a high-end brand like Louis Vuitton. And then I think this is the last one. Venues themselves, not now because we're not doing it, but live events themselves can be a smart side window bet. As a revenue stream for esports with prize pools up to $25 million in certain final championships, the live events themselves have become a revenue stream, not to mention a cultural detonator. In the traditional way, to market, would be to get dasher boards or put up signage or, take over, a certain section of the video screen or the ribbon boards. And that's, again, all well and good. But what we found interesting was, before COVID hit and all the live events got locked down, we participated in the Overwatch League championships at the end of the fall, the year before COVID hit. Numbers are escaping me right now. I think it's COVID brain. But we found that, the interactive technology, the main thing about this sport is it's a lot more interactive than the traditional sports. So yeah, you can buy dasher boards and static things, but when every person who walked up with a ticket to that final Overwatch championship was handed this guy right here, there's a picture of it there, which it's really not expensive technology. All it does is light up and buzz, but whenever anything interesting happened up on the main Jumbotron, Jumbotron, as these two teams were competing for the final prize, it would light up and it would rattle or do whatever. So again, and the NBA is taking that now and merchandising that. So again, two-way dialogue, simple, easy technology, a non-traditional way to go in through the side window and take advantage of the live events when they come back. So those are just a couple of things on the ecosystem. There are others, but, fans, traditional sports, the venues themselves, co-branding, a lot of opportunities. It seems very simple, and it is simple, but it's not easy. And that's kind of what we do. We partner with brands and companies to, unless you're living this, eating, breathing, sleeping it night and day, all day, every day, 25/8, 366, because 24/7, 365 isn't enough. It's not an easy matchmaking deal. But if you do it, you come in authentically, you come in the side window, you come in efficiently, and you come in, again, most importantly, authentically. Any brand can have a real shot at making hay in competitive gaming and esports. And it would be silly if, as marketers and advertisers, we didn't just give a shameless plug. So here it is, the shameless plug. We are SweetScience. If anything we said is interesting to you, and you are a marketer or a brand, whether it's a startup or a pedigree, legacy brand trying to crack in, this is what we do. We help matchmake a way to connect all of the esports participants, fans, gamers, and athletes with brands that are interested in connecting with them. And Tom's the man, Conti at GoSweetScience.com. How's that for a shameless plug? Mic drop.
There you go. So that's our story. We don't know if there are any questions. We're certainly willing to entertain those now. I'm actually trying to find, I'm having trouble finding the chat, but
Right now, there aren't any questions in the chat, but if anyone has a question, feel free to drop it in there, or we've got a good group here, so you can also feel free to unmute yourself and ask out loud. I have a quick question just about sort of your view and take on the greater Philadelphia esports ecosystem. How do you see us, in our positioning in the country? Do we have a pretty robust ecosystem? Is it growing? We have work to do. What do you think?
I think, we'll both talk to this, but some of the best things that are happening in the organization of this sport are happening right here. And I think if you look at the investment that's made with the Philadelphia Fusion as an example, right? I mean, the Overwatch League pre-COVID, the goal was to pursue a model similar to traditional sports leagues. So for all the teams that are in the Overwatch League, the requirement is that you have an arena so that they could mimic the home and away types of dynamics that exist in traditional sports. And what's happening with Philadelphia Fusion, the infrastructure that's being built there, in terms of the arena, in terms of training centers, in terms of the connectivity to the broader sports community that happens there, that's huge. And it is our view is it's the gold standard. It really is the gold standard for what's happening in that league. There's a lot of venture capital going on. We've got in the town. We've got venture capital firms starting their own teams. We've got, we're pioneering organized female teams of female athletes in this city. That's just off the top of my head. But Jeff, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, no, I think you captured it pretty well. It's a great question. I mean, we all know, those of us have been doing it for a while, that what took competitive gaming to this esports level and the scale of it, originated in Southeast Asia, particularly South Korea. From an international perspective, it's flourished in Europe and absolutely in South America. And so like the trends and the fads kind of come that direction, and therefore the growth comes from that direction. And unsurprisingly, LA, Vegas. Vegas has, tremendous support for esports, a strong esports community. Los Angeles, absolutely true. The Northwest, Seattle, very strong. And then unsurprisingly, tech-ish capitals like Austin, but it is coming east. And if we were to say, how does Philadelphia in terms of east of the Mississippi stack up? It's very strong. Boston has a strong community. Atlanta has a strong community based on music and its drive and hip hop culture and whatever. But Philadelphia is well positioned. Again, we're just being on the East Coast, even though it's virtual, and you'd think that it could come from anywhere. We're not as advanced as a market as, again, some of the West Coast places, but within the East Coast itself, we're in the top tier for sure. And the reasons are the ones Tom stated. There are institutional people pushing in chips from an institutional perspective. Comcast has certainly been supportive. Building a full-fledged arena, not unlike the one in Arlington, which Dallas has already done. So there's an institutional push to make it a success. There's also a startup grown, mature startup, from a technology perspective and investing in sports technology and therefore esports. You've got 76 Capital doing some stuff, and then Nerd Street. Those guys know what they're doing. They live it, they breathe it. The race to market, the race to be the mature sort of lead market is still very much available. Philadelphia is very much in the hunt. And as long as we get out of our own way a little bit, sometimes, which we have a tendency to do in other arenas, we have, it's a thriving, growing, good baseline market. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you. It looks like there's a question from Angela as well. Angela, did you want to ask out loud.
Sure, I can ask. I'm just wondering, like, I know there's college esports leagues and professional sports leagues, and you know, most of these players are similar age. So I'm kind of wondering what the difference is between those two groups, and can you market to both audiences in a similar way?
Great question.
It is a great question. I mean, you know, from a university standpoint, we're talking about, again, the expansion of this as a real sport. I think there are currently over 130 Division I universities that now have sanctioned teams, that there are now leagues that you can compete, universities, Pac-12, Big Ten, where you actually have competitions that exist as you would with what we're considering to be the traditional sports. That's now come down into the into the esports world as well. They're building arenas, they're building infrastructure, they're trying to compete like the big boys. But, and I know Jeff will say this, that's an organizing principle around a bigger organization like a university and then a college conference, not necessarily indicative of age, right? Because that is, it's more about talent than it is age. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to expound on that.
No, it's a terrific question, and the truth is that you know, 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, but 5 years ago, the only way that colleges would, you know, entertain the idea of bringing someone on with gaming as their forte for entrance, let alone any kind of financial aid or you know, scholarship, was in game development. Fast forward to today, you know, Tom mentioned a number of colleges and universities, but like, you know, University of Irvine, California at Irvine, Full Sail, which I mentioned, Carnegie Mellon, you know, a lot of old school colleges and universities, and a lot of, you know, sort of newer colleges and universities are actually giving scholarship money for players. And so what does that inspire? You know, if the generation before, you know, what did you want to be when you grow up and why do you need to go to college to get there? You know, being a professional gamer wasn't necessarily going to be on the top of, you know, on the tip of anyone's tongue. Now there is a whole generation of people that do want to be professional gamers. They can make a lot of money at it. And oh, by the way, that's not just as an athlete. You can be a professional streamer, you know, the form of broadcaster, and you can, you know, kids themselves are, you know, in the college, you know, age group and even younger, are monetizing themselves as streamers or players, whether it's through tournaments or whether it's through Twitch and their social, you know, their social footprint. So, you know, it's very active. It's everywhere. The question about, you know, do you market to them can you market to them both equally? The answer is absolutely right, because yes, because what's interesting is it's no longer, you don't need, I'm not saying to anyone, don't go to college. But while the colleges and universities are offering, you know, opportunities for people to come to them and explore their desire to be a competitive, you know, professional gamer, you don't need it. And that's where the FaZe clans and, you know, there are other platforms to become a professional gamer other than the college route. And what unifies the two is this idea of a competitive gene. You know, the same competitive gene that manifests itself in you know, traditional sports, like, you know, scholarship for, you know, a basketball player or a football player. You know, that is how that competitive gene, that true competitive gene, is manifest in, you know, the college age group, you know, whether they go to college or not. And then it becomes really about not demographics, as Tom said, like the, you know, the age of, you know, let's say somebody goes to college early 16 to somebody who stays longer 24, just making those numbers up. It becomes psychographics. So the only difference in marketing, you want to stoke the competitive gene, but the way that you would do that with a sports sim player versus an RPG player, or a, you know, you can go down the line, a shooter player, you know, the psychographics of the subsets of, again, what we're calling, you know, a sport, are how you slightly nuance speaking to them differently, but they're still bound in that college age group, whether they go to college or not, with a competitive gene.
And I would also say that, look, there are certain, if you're trying to target, there are certain titles that resonate with certain ages, if you will. There are certain titles that there are nuances within the titles that give us the ability to target specific brands into the right universe of enthusiasts based on what we see within the population that follows that particular game. So in some ways, you almost think of the game as the the programming, because there is an audience that is attracted to it. There's an audience that is involved in terms of not only watching it and fandom, but also playing it. And we have the ability to target and tap in via some of your traditional marketing analysis, if you will.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Awesome. It looks like Jesse had a really good question as well. Jesse, did you want to say it out loud?
Sure. So firstly, gentlemen, thank you, both Jeff and Tom. So I see many presentations, and you can tell that you guys are marketers just because it was simple to easy to read. And you guys talked about it. No, that means so much.
Oh, thank you.
So if you guys put together, if one of your team members, be sure you give them a little pat on the back.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
yeah. So I was just asking about, are you part of or standing up for women in the space? And
that's an unbelievable question and an incredibly timely question. So we are, and we believe that, look, we know that women are enthusiasts. We know that women and organizations for women in gaming are building and growing and becoming a force. We know that gaming is inclusive, but we also are acutely aware of some of the barriers that are continuously being and need to be broken. So yes, we are actually, I'm not going to name the name of the advertiser.
No, and that's fine.
But we are in the process of developing. We have developed a treatment that we are in the process of producing. That is part 2 of a series that was created called Athletes Rising.
eSports athletes.
And Jeff had mentioned Cormac Dooley. He was actually the subject, and following him to FIFA and Europe and all, was the subject of the first season, which aired on Fox Sports 1. The second year is called Desert Queens, and it is all about the challenges of female athletes breaking into and competing against men, and how the challenges that they've had, as well as the success that they're achieving. So we are on top of this. We're right there with you, and we wholeheartedly endorse it.
That's awesome. So I guess then, would you like to continue and go in other avenues of that space if there was opportunity?
Absolutely. What do you have in mind? But yes,
just feeling you out, just understanding it. I know of a few things, a little premature, but we are innovators and connectors. And when we see something that has an opportunity to maybe bring something to the table because of resource or knowledge or money, we like to try to plug those things in. Perfect. And I've been wanting to learn about it and just happened to stumble across this, and happens that I'm right around the corner from you guys, but the people that I work with are all around the country and the globe. So it was just fortuitous to listen to you guys speak.
No, this is great. And again, the female gamer is really what we're focused on for immediately for 2021, because
Sure.
we saw the opportunity and we built a program against it. I guess the question would be, let's see. So I have your handle here.
But, you want info.
You have our email address based on what's on the screen. So if you want to shoot me an email and we can just set up a time and we'll get a call on the books, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Again, like I said, things are a little premature, but it's always good just to connect.
Great.
Fabulous.
What I can
do is, want to be clear. It's such a great topic, and we could go on and on and on. But yes, it's clearly an emerging. There's a commercial reason to do that, but again, as advocates and fans of this industry that have been around it for a long time, if you look at the way that the women are treated in Southeast Asia, look, there's a toxicity to gaming across many different barriers, and there always has been. But if you look at how, and I'm just going to say it out loud, how badass the female gamers are, in Southeast Asia and in Latin America, and as a percentage, they're growing much faster. Again, in North America, we're a little slow to learn that. So there's obviously a commercial reason to be doing it. But, again, as fans of this industry, there's a industry reason to do it. It's the great equalizer. It doesn't mandate any kind of physical, obviously it does Twitch fact. I'm not going to get into that, the minutia of that, but there's an awesome moral and gaming purpose to it, in addition to the financial reasons. So
the other thing that we see is we talk about, gamers, those that are completely immersed in this as athletes and fans. The whole body, mind, spirit thing, the balance of being a well-rounded person as well as a good gamer, as well as a good athlete, being a good teammate, being a good person. Hey, get an education as well as be a great gamer. Things like proper nutrition, wellness, mindfulness, these kinds of things. The female gamers are really in tune with this, unlike most of their male counterparts. It's really not surprising. But what that's doing is it's opening up new advertisers, or new opportunities for new brands and advertisers to begin to engage in the sport in ways that they never thought of, because the female athletes and the female fans are more open to it than the males have been. So we're super excited to see what's happening.
That's
and
fantastic.
Our mission is just to try and accelerate the growth and inclusiveness.
Well, good. Thank you, gentlemen. And Tom, I sent you over my contact info in the chat, just so you have it.
That's great. So let's connect when you feel you're ready. I'll send you a follow-up email either later this evening.
That's
or
perfect.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes, we'd love to continue the conversation.
I have a quick question as we're running up on time, and it's somewhat of a loaded question. I think there's a generational mindset that you have to go to college. And so for parents who are saying to their children who might want to be a professional gamer, you have to go to college. Are there, and I'm saying it's loaded because I'm sure it's very kid dependent, but are there paths that you would suggest? I went to, when I've had these conversations with these kids, I went to the traditional, well, you could be a programmer, which you said is, there's so much more to offer these days in esports than, has historically been. So I'm sure you guys get this question all the time. So how do you answer that question?
I'm just going to tee up a couple of things and then Jeff can take it, because he has actually his kids are right in this range. For me, it's really interesting because we get this question. We do get the question a lot, and we look at it through different lenses. One of our earlier clients was a university called Becker College, and they're in New Hampshire, and they happen to have one of the foremost esports development, meaning programming, game design, programming, that kind of thing, curriculums in the country. And they compete with MIT that's right in their backyard, and they're actually winning students. So the positioning there was how to turn your passion into a profession, but it was about the programming side. This was a few years ago. The problem now is these guys are sitting in their dens, and the amount of cash that can be generated through this, there's real money that's at stake. So it's a hard question to answer. The only thing I would say is that now the universities are at least putting structure around it. And for me, I'm going to date myself, but when I was going to university, when I started, I wanted to go in as a music major, and I had to fight the same issues with my parents. It was like, go get a real degree. Well, I found my way in with scholarship through music, and then transitioned into business from there. So at least now there's structure there that can attract kids and it's helpful to parents, because it's like, look, you can still go to university. You can play in this club. You can compete for a seat on this team because it's organized. That helps a little bit, but it is a very difficult question. So Jeff,
it's a terrific question, and
It was a great question.
as the father of 6 of these millennial and post-millennial cherubs, 5 boys and 1 girl, obviously, you walk the line between they are individuals. You want to encourage their individualism, but you want the best path for them within whatever their individualism is. College is always an important part. What's cool is that as this industry of competitive gaming and esports continues to mature, there are paths that, again, I think you have to start it early, I guess is the way to put it, like with anything else. Like if you saw, that one of them was into sports and is athletic, you might start them doing, leagues that are, outside of just their junior high or their high school, to continue to grow that. If they're, as Tom said, into music, you give them music lessons. And as this industry has matured, there are, like, we even have one client, Uptime United, that like their whole program, we were talking to Gary about it before this session started, that is about teaching kids much earlier, even before high school, even as young as elementary school, that it's you can, if college is how, they don't have to go to college to get that, to succeed at this. But if that's the place you want to encourage them, just like there are in, traditional sports or music or other activities, there are starting to develop not only leagues, but institutions that, they go to after school or before school or whatever, that start to seed the notion of, this is the right path to get to where you want to go. We could probably share with you, some of those examples, offline over the wires, but as the industry matures, the ability to take a college type path and seed it early through extracurricular activities, just like you would a sport or a music or acting or whatever, they exist.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. I will, I think, speak for everyone by saying that was an amazing session. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Definitely looking forward to having you come back in the future and share some more and engaging with us. As I mentioned before, we definitely want to continue to dive deeper into the esports space here at Venture Cafe. Right now, actually, we're going to transition to our next session. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat. Everyone is welcome to join us in our networking space called Remo. Just click on that link if you want to join us, hang out at a couple virtual tables for the next half hour, and then we're going to jump into our another session, which is an artist studio tour to sort of close out the night. So we hope you all enjoyed this session, and we'll see you all very soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.